Hi everybody, today I want to talk about why you need your own game plan. Yes, you. Now, back in the day, especially if you worked in sports media, the way that sports news used to break is you had no idea if your team won or lost that night unless you lived locally in that town. The local beat writer would write the story, get the interview clips, and then they would take it, submit it to their editor. Their editor would choose to either publish it or not in the next day's paper. Today, it's not like that anymore. Everybody is sort of aware of the phenomenon, quote unquote, that is Facebook, that is Twitter, that you can have an opinion, you can have a sports opinion, and you find out something instantly, you find out a score or a play instantly, and you can share your opinion with the masses. Now, the problem with this is that if you build your audience, and what you're essentially doing whenever you're putting your opinions out on Facebook, out on social media, out on Twitter, is that you are broadcasting your opinion to your audience. And what I like to do instead is I like to put teaser content on social media, but drive everybody back for your opinion to your website, because it's never been more important in today's media to own your own audience. And you're not owning your own audience if you're just putting your message out there on social media for everybody to read it for free. And I don't want to necessarily say it's for free, because even if you put your opinion out on a website, you might not be earning an income from that website, but you have to see the sort of bigger picture. And the bigger picture, especially when you're working in sports media, is that you have to have a place where everybody can go to find all of your work. So you could be live streaming on Facebook, you could be periscoping on Twitter, you could be, offering in-game analysis as you're watching any kind of sporting event that's going on, and you could be giving your opinion in real time. But if somebody is just finding out about you or your company or the media that you represent or the media that you want to be in the future, then they're going to have a hard time piecing things together if they're looking at your Twitter profile and all they see are in-game tweets. You have to have a home, you have to have a place where all of those opinions, all of those views, all of your work that you've done over the past few years or your entire career, you have to have a place where it calls a home. And I say this because I've seen countless businesses that what they'll do, especially back in Facebook's heyday, and I don't want to say Facebook is not in its heyday anymore, because it definitely is. It's the most popular social network by a mile. But what used to happen back in the day is that you had your brand page, you had your website page. I had a page for GuysGirl that I nurtured constantly. But what happened is one day Facebook decided, and not one day, probably over a course of a little bit of time, but they decided that they wanted to start changing the timeline, changing how stories appear in your timeline. And that's where we get this fancy word called an algorithm. And an algorithm is essentially a software tool that judges what you're going to interact with the most on your timeline based off of how you interact with it. So if you are constantly getting into political fights, or you're getting into sports debates, or you're outraged by a certain story, or you really like so-and-so's 100th baby picture that they've posted for the day, whatever you like, whatever you engage with the most, that algorithm is going to focus your timeline to those things that you're more likely to engage with versus something that you never have engaged with before in your life. A good example of this is that I knew of a salon, and they did not have a website, and they built up their presence on social media where they had more than 10,000 likes on their brand page. And every message that they're putting out there, every coupon that they put out there, for a free blowout or a free root touch-up, whatever they were putting out there was getting out to their entire audience. Nowadays, that doesn't happen anymore because Facebook wants you to pay for that exposure. That same exposure that if you put it on your website, you wouldn't have to pay for anything. Well, I mean, you have to pay for website hosting, but that's another video. But for in this case in particular, I want to talk about why owning your own website is so very crucial, especially if you're working in sports media. And I'm going to give a really good example. And I think most of us who work in sports are aware of the recent layoffs from ESPN. Most of us who wanted to work in sports grew up thinking that ESPN was the end-all be-all, and that we were going to, that's the ultimate upper echelon of your career. And in some cases it still is, but the people who just got laid off, I'm pretty sure that they're thinking differently nowadays, and they're probably thinking, dang, I really should have had my own website. I really should have, sort of cultivated my audience so that I have more power when I'm going to other radio stations, other media outlets, other companies that may want to hire me. Not only do you want to have a website for your resume, but you want to use that in a way that's going to get you your next gig. And I say that, and I call this all having a game plan, because just this past weekend, GuysGirl just launched a new series on this very topic. And that if you have a podcast, if you have a blog, what you're going to struggle with is that you don't have a home for that podcast, that you don't have a home for your vlog. If you're creating a podcast on iTunes or any other network, yeah, your podcast lives within that network. But if somebody doesn't have an iPhone or doesn't have access to iTunes, they can't get access to your work. And so that's where it comes into the extreme benefit of having your own website to put your work onto. Another story that I want to talk about is, and it sort of relates to all of this, is a tennis broadcaster named Doug Adler. He has been broadcasting tennis, and he has been doing play-by-play on this sport for more than a decade. And recently there was a New York Times reporter that was overhearing his broadcast, and when Doug Adler was talking about Venus Williams in the middle of a match doing play-by-play, he mentioned the word guerrilla warfare, or not guerrilla warfare. He didn't add warfare to the end of it, but he said guerrilla. And this New York Times writer immediately thought it was a racist phrase and went to Twitter and went to try to expose, I'm using air quotes here, expose Doug Adler for the racist that he is for using this phrase, even though this phrase, guerrilla tactic, he said in particular that she was running towards the net in a guerrilla fashion or a guerrilla tactic, and he was referring to guerrilla warfare, in which you attack and you keep attacking. And what this New York Times writer, he took it as a racist term. Well, it sort of caught fire on Twitter. And then Doug Adler is suspended from his job from ESPN, even though he was working for more than a decade on tennis broadcasting, and he had never said anything remotely racist during that entire decade of his career. And he got suspended from it, and he faced so much backlash from what I like to call the social media mobs. He faced so much backlash that he ended up having a heart attack. And this sort of, it sort of goes back to the thinking that Doug Adler has given his heart and his soul to a company, and at the drop of a hat, they dropped him like it was nothing. And they didn't factor in that he had spent the majority of his career without incident. And I tell you this story because you never know when your life is going to change on a dime. And for a lot of these ESPN employees, a lot of other people working in sports media who don't maybe work for a company as high profile as ESPN, they're working maybe for a local radio station affiliate, and they are let go. And if you don't have your own game plan, if you don't have your own website, then what you're forced to do is you're forced to scrounge, and you're forced to squabble and to go to other companies and see if they're willing to take a chance on you. And they're not going to want to take a risk on you if they can't see your work, the work that you've done in the past. And where can they find this work? They can find it on your website. And if you build your website, if you build up your game plan the way you want it to be, the way you want to be portrayed for that next step, it creates a lot less worry if a network decides to drop you on a dime. It makes it so you have a little bit of a safety net when you're looking for that next gig. Now, because independent brands have the most power in all of sports, I'm going to throw out a few examples here. Girlfriend of mine, Gat from SprotsTakes.com. Go visit. It's a Kansas City sports-based website. Go visit. She does some fabulous work on there. But she's been running this website for years. And what did she do? She had her own website. She had her own team of writers that was covering content constantly. She's controlling her own audience and parlayed it into a gig working for Kansas City ESPN, their local radio station affiliate there in Kansas City. It's the first Kansas City talk show that is by women, a sports talk show by women. So kudos to her, but that's a great example of her using her audience and using her brand to further her career into better career aspirations. Now, if that ESPN station decided to fire her tomorrow, which I doubt that they would, but if they decided to fire her tomorrow, she wouldn't be worrying as much much if she didn't have a website. She has a website, she has an audience, and she can command that audience no matter where she takes it to. So it's sort of, if you have your own game plan, if you have your own audience of how you're going to tackle your role in media, whether it's entertainment, whether it's politics, whether it's business, it doesn't matter. If you command your own audience, then you are going to be able to command the better career positions in the future and higher pay. And it all stems down to having your own website. Another great example of owning your own media, and despite how you feel about him, but Clay Travis without Kick the Coverage. He has a nationally syndicated sports radio show and hosted by Fox. And if Fox decided to fire him yesterday, he would still be fine because he owns 100% of his website, Outkick the Coverage. And he also, on top of having a nationally syndicated radio show and writing for his website, he also has a daily Facebook Live and Periscope show. So he's still commanding an audience regardless if he has the radio station, regardless if he's working for Fox or not. He's going to have that for as long as he continues to run it. And that's part of an extreme benefit of owning your own website, owning your own audience. Now, I'm not saying all of this to scare you away from working for big broadcasters, big media companies, because I happen to think that working for companies like that, you're going to earn an extreme amount of knowledge, an extreme amount of experience, and you can use that to apply to your own thing of what you got going on. Like this, for me, with GuysGirl, I started out as a blogger in 2009. I never thought that I would be sitting in front of a camera and talking to, people on YouTube and people on Facebook. I never thought that was in the cards for me, but you never know where your role is going to take you. And especially in the world of media, you have to be able to adapt to survive, because social media networks can come and go, but your website will always be there. And that's why I want to just stress so much about having your own game plan, because if you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. And especially if you have a vlog, if you have a podcast, there's recently a podcast that we brought on. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, then you can see a sample landing page that we made for a partner site for GuysGirl. They came on, they have their own podcast. Meg Smitherman, she's freaking fantastic. And she writes a lot of really great hockey articles. So what we did on GuysGirl is we created a game plan for her. And what we did is we create her a title page, and I'm scrolling through it right now, and you can see her logo, you can see a podcast player, all of her latest episodes of the shows that she's been on, and then you scroll down and you see more of her work, more of her social media, and it's basically, it just hammers home the point that if you own your own brand, if you own your own content, you need to have a home for it. And that's a great example of how, even if you don't have a website, because a lot of people, they say, I want to be a writer. They say, I want to be a podcaster. And a lot of people don't want to deal with the bullshit that's involved with running a website. And I don't want to say it's a lot of bullshit, but it's a lot of bullshit. And what you have to do is you have to treat it as a business. And for those people who don't want to run a website, that's where this new program from GuysGirl, I think, is really going to help a lot of people. If you want a website, we can do that for you too, and we can do it affordably. But on the flip side of it, if you're just starting out working in sports media, if you have a, myname.wordpress.com or myname.wix.com, you're just now getting your feet wet with sort of getting your brand and your voice out there. And what you need to do is take that next step. What you need to do is get your own website, because how this game plan program from GuysGirl is going to work, it works in 3 different ways. You can have your own website where you're already writing all of your blog articles, and we can pull that content in automatically and share it with our audience. Or what you can do is if you have a vlog or if you have a podcast and you want a home for it, we can build a page for you, just like I just showed on the YouTube video. If you're listening on podcasts, you can check out our YouTube channel at GuysGirl, or you can just go to guysgirl.com and search for the video there. It'll be up here shortly. But that second option is if you want a home for your podcast, you want a home for your social media takes and things like that. And then we have a third option where we can build the website for you. And I say that from an independent perspective. So I'm not going to send you to Wix and it's an all-in-one platform solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build you your own independent website, because I sort of raised in this media blogosphere. I'm very, very passionate about you owning your own content and you remaining independent, because that's where you're going to find the most value. But the problem with remaining independent is that you don't really have a lot of people to sort of bounce ideas off of and work together and expand your career with helpful advice and tips and even just overall just website tips. That's where the game plan program comes into play, because we can either build it for you or we can show you how to do it yourself. And so earlier this week, if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's over on GuysGirl.com. It's under bloggers and broadcasters. There's a little tab, drop-down tab that says game plan on there. It's a big personal goal of mine to make sure that everyone I know, that everyone that works in sports media, if you're having an opinion and you're putting it only on social media, cut it out. Use social media as a tool to drive your audience to a website that you own and that you can monetize and that you can set yourself up for the future. And not just today, not just 140 characters on what happened in the game last night, but what you can do to set yourself up for success in the future. And you need to do that by having your own game plan. If you want to see more of this, just check out YouTube, check out GuysGirl.com. We're all over the place. We're all over on social media. And if you're feeling extra fancy free today, just hit that subscribe button. You can subscribe via YouTube or you can subscribe to our email newsletter. It's all in the show notes. I want to thank you guys. My name is Blythe Brumleve. If you haven't heard of me, go to GuysGirl.com. There's a ton of stuff on there all about me. I don't feel like dropping a spiel again. But I'm super, super passionate about helping you get your career to the next level. So if you need any help, just hit me up. I'm on Twitter. I'm on social media. I'm on all of those sites. So thanks again, and I hope you guys tune in for the next video.